Hi, welcome back to this mini course in optimal breathing for stress management, emotional well-being and optimal performance. We've looked at so far the importance of good breathing for brain functioning, then the 3 components of good breathing, and then in the last video we looked at the mindset needed for approaching breathing practice. I called this the mindset of mindfulness, an attitude of openness and interest and trust in the body, taking the comfortable feelings around the breath as feedback from the body intelligence, savouring but neither grasping nor rejecting. In this video, we're going to focus on the last component of the practice, which is slow, regular breathing as a basis for creating heart coherence, which is this state of efficient and beneficial physiological functioning that I mentioned earlier. And it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which relaxes and calms the body, and activates the social and executive brain. In other words, it creates that most valuable state, calm focus. I'll be suggesting that you try out paced breathing, which is a fairly reliable and easy way to generate heart coherence. So what is heart coherence? Well, it's a pattern of variation in your heart rate. The heart is naturally variable, even when you're not really doing anything. And in fact, more variability is a sign of health. Think of the heart as like a fast motorbike, which is very responsive, able to rev up at an instant when called upon, as opposed to a clapped out old banger that just can't respond. So in coherence, the heart rate gets into sync with the breath, so it speeds up on the in-breath and then slows down on the out-breath. It's easier to see this with a graph. Here, the red trace is heart rate, and the blue is the measure of the breath. Here's the in-breath, and the heart rate is increasing, and then turning and falling again on the out-breath here. This image is actually a screenshot from biofeedback software, which I use in my practice. Biofeedback can make things easier when you're working with breathing, but it's not essential. Coherence is a natural and reflex-like response. You don't have to try. You don't have to think about it. The body will just do it for you. But the interesting thing is that stress and difficult emotions tend to block the rhythm. For coherence to be appreciable, the breath has to be slow enough and regular enough to allow it time to develop. In fact, 6 breaths per minute is a sort of physiological resonance point at which coherence tends to be maximal. Coherence is good for you. It's not just a state of relaxation, but a basis for optimal performance. So, for example, reaction times are improved, as are other measures of cognitive performance. And it generally feels good too. To repeat what I said before, in coherence, you're giving your parasympathetic nervous system a workout. It's not that you have to be in coherence all the time, and indeed 6 breaths per minute would be artificially slow for most contexts, other than perhaps meditation. But a little practice each day is like fitness training for the nervous system. So while coherence isn't simply a mechanical way of breathing, emotional qualities are important too. The best way to start to explore coherence is with slow, regular breathing at around 6 breaths per minute. And an easy way to do that is to use a breath pacer. Now, I have a free software breath pacer available to you on my website. You can download it and install it on your Windows computer. What it does is it generates both a sound and a graph that you can follow with your breathing. I've added links to the download on the page of my site where this video is hosted, and there's also a support video showing you how to install and run the software. You can set the parameters for the breath, the main thing being the breathing rate. I suggest setting it to 6 breaths per minute, which is in fact a default setting. If you find that's too slow for you, you can set it faster to begin with, and then maybe gradually reduce it down. Now, at this point, you might be thinking that the idea of paced breathing goes rather against the grain of what I've been saying earlier in the presentations. Shouldn't you be letting the body breathe for you, allowing it to change in its own time and its own way? Well, it's a fair point actually. When you first start the paced breathing, you're having to focus on it, you're having to think about it, and it looks like you're controlling the breath with your conscious thinking, problem-solving mind, rather than trusting in the body. But it's only like that at first. After a short amount of practice, it becomes easy, and you can allow yourself to follow the pace on autopilot, so to speak, meaning that you can trust the body to follow the pace for you. Of course, you don't want to lose sight of the other things that we've been talking about, so allow the breath to come from deep down in the belly with easy, flowing movements of the diaphragm, and also allowing the breath to be gentle, perhaps inviting it to become more and more gentle. All in the spirit of mindfulness, being open to and guided by the internal feedback from your body in the form of pleasurable, comfortable feelings, savouring but not judging, struggling or grasping. Okay, you're ready to try out paced breathing right after this video. Just to repeat a point, don't expect that your breath has to be slow and regular all the time. That's not really feasible, but just a few minutes practice on a regular basis will give your system a workout. So I suggest that you create an intention to practice for a few minutes each day, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. It's a good idea to plan it into your schedule somehow so that you can have a set time for practicing. Of course, you don't need to use the pacer forevermore. It's just a means to an end. And as soon as you've got the feel for slow, regular breathing and it starts to feel more like an automatic habit, you might decide you prefer not to use the pacing. Indeed, you don't have to use the pacer at all. The only point is to breathe slowly and regularly. And you only need to try the pacer if you think that you could use some help with that. There's just one final short video in the sequence still to come. Let's not be naive and think that what you've learned here is going to solve all your problems of stress and anxiety. For a lot of people, it's difficult to put these principles into practice, and breathing continues to feel uncomfortable or even a source of anxiety and panic for one reason or another. So in the last part, I'm going to say something about what could be missing or what could be going wrong and how I can help further.